level 1 upgrade. So here's an RC that I've had for quite some time, guys, and it's just been sitting around on the shelf. It's time to go ahead and start doing some upgrades for it. And of course, this was donated to me by RC Nut. Thanks again, man. Now guys, when he donated this to me, it didn't have any tires, no electronics. It was pretty much just a roller, but as you can see, it has come a long way. I even gave it a new paint job for its body. Though the paint is on the top of the body and not on the inside, I'll have to fix that someday, but as it is, it looks pretty good. Now this RC did come with quite a few upgrades, starting off with RPM rod ends, a Proline transmission, MIP drive shafts, aluminum wing mount, aluminum rear axle carriers, aluminum servo mounts, aluminum steering bell cranks, an aluminum front brace, and finally a carbon fiber battery tie down. Now for what I added, I slapped on the Traxxas Bandit tires as well as the Sidewinder 3 and of course a Millennium motor. And I just so happen to have an extra wing that was meant for this RC that I obtained by very unusual means. But anyways, I need to go ahead and get on to the first upgrade. So as you guys can see, the front of this RC has no protection at all. I need some kind of brace. A chassis brace. And thanks to RC Bros 2000 that donated this to me, I can now get this installed. However, there's a couple other things I need to take care of first. The top plate was stripped and the chassis was broken. You can see that I jerry-rigged it with a piece of plastic that I had from an old RC body. I need to get these fixed, but thankfully RC Bros 2000 donated a chassis and a top plate. Guys, I need to get these installed and then I can go ahead and take care of this. So let's go ahead and start taking everything off of this chassis. I'm going to start off by removing these two battery tie-down posts. Next up, I need to go ahead and take out the ESC. I'm going to start by unplugging it from the motor. Pull those wires out, and I need to get into the waterproof receiver box. It's held together with 2 screws. Now one thing I forgot to mention, I did add a receiver. It's just a 27 megahertz, nothing too special, the old Traxxas one. But yeah, I did have to take the receiver box out of its case so it could actually fit into here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and pull out the servo and the ESC. That way I can go ahead and take all the rest out of it. Next up, I need to remove the bottom of the waterproof receiver box, which is held in with a single screw. After that screw's out of place, I just go ahead and pull it up. Now I'm going to remove this seal from the side, and you can see where the wires get fed in, there is a rubber brace. I'm going to go ahead and pull that out, set all that off to the side. And now I can go ahead and pull out the ESC. The wire for the ESC, of course, gets fed underneath the battery tray, so I need to go ahead and pull the wire through. And now it's time to work on the servo. The servo is held in with 2 screws on the bottom. With those out of the way, you can see that the servo can now be lifted out. Next up, I need to go ahead and take all this off. I'm going to start off with these 3 screws. With those out of the way, I'm going to flip the RC back on over and I'm going to remove these 4 screws. Once those are out of the way, you can see that the front assembly falls right on off. Now it's time for the rear assembly. I'm going to start off by undoing these 4 screws. Next up, it's time to flip the RC back on over and then undo these 6 screws. Alright, now I can go ahead and pull out the chassis, which is just going to take a little bit of moving around, because you're going to have to push the chassis down from these 2 braces and then pull it out. One thing you do have to be careful about is that there is this rear brace that holds in the rear A-arms, and if that does slide out, you just got to go ahead and push that back into position and keep everything in place. Alright, so I got the old chassis off and you can see, yeah, that jerry rig did not last very long. It broke off, so it is a good thing I am replacing the chassis. Thank you again, RC Bros 2000. Anyways, I took the Velcro off and I'm going to be putting it on the new body. All I have to do is trim the excess plastic on the new chassis and we're set. Alright, so the spare plastic has been trimmed and I transferred all the Velcro. So let's go ahead and put everything back on. We're going to start off by pushing this bottom flap down, sliding the chassis back and then pushing it up into these braces and then reinstalling these 4 screws. Now it's time to flip the RC back over and install these 6 screws. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the front assembly and it's time to replace this front top plate. I'm going to start by undoing these 4 screws that hold in the front shock tower. Going to pop that off, and now I need to go ahead and undo the steering bell cranks. It's held in with 2 screws. Okay, I'm going to pull that off to the side and I can pull out the top chassis brace. And guys, this is where it got stripped. In fact, when I compare it to the new one, you can see exactly how much damage there was when I crashed. Not very good at all. Well, it's time to go ahead and reverse the process. I'm going to slide everything into position and reinstall these 2 screws. Alright, a quick note with these 2 screws, once you tighten them down all the way, untighten them anywhere from half a turn to a full turn. That way the steering bell cranks can freely rotate. Now I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the front shock tower by slapping this back into position and then installing the 4 screws that hold it in. Okay, now that those have been taken care of, I went ahead and pushed this bottom brace up into the top plate because there is little knobs that go into holes right there. Now I can go ahead and install this back onto the chassis. I'm going to start off by redoing the 4 screws on the bottom. Okay, now I need to go ahead and make sure that the servo's in place, so I can go ahead and reinstall these 2 screws that hold it down. Now that the servo has been installed, I need to go ahead and reinstall these 3 screws. Alright, now I can go ahead and install the SV3 back into position. I'm going to start off, of course, by feeding the cable back through underneath the battery tray. Slide that in position, and then I'm going to use some double-sided tape to hold all this down. As for the waterproof receiver box, I'm going to go ahead and get the bottom, slide it down in position, and reinstall this screw. Then I'm going to go ahead and get this rubber seal. I'm going to slide in the ESC wire all the way down to the bottom, and then get the servo wire, put that in through the middle, then I'm going to slide it into this groove. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull these tight. Not too tight, just tight enough. And then we have this small little seal which we're going to push into the last groove since we are only going to be using 2 wires. And there we have it. Now I need to go ahead and get the seal and install this onto the waterproof receiver box. Once that seal's taken care of, I'm going to go ahead and get the servo and plug that into channel 1. And then I'm going to get the ESC and plug that in to channel 2. Now I'm just going to go ahead and tuck all these wires into position and reattach the top, which is held down with 2 screws. Okay, and the last thing to do is to go ahead and reattach the battery tie-down post. Alright, with that taken care of, the last thing to do is to go ahead and plug the ESC back into the motor. However, one thing that's always driven me nuts is this really strange color combination between the Sidewinder 3 and the Millennium motor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use some wire cover and dress these up just a little bit. Alright, so I went ahead and used red, white, and black string tubing, and as you can see, everything now matches. Looks so much better, makes so much more sense. And if I ever have to unplug it in the future, I'll be able to easily match them back up. Now, with all that finally done, we can finally get to the upgrade. Let's go ahead and open this up and check it out. And I always found this rather interesting ever since I got it that, yeah, it comes with a drill bit. So it looks like there's going to be some modification. And of course I'm going to have to cut this open, no problem there. Okay, we do have instructions. We have the brace itself. Looks good. Looks like we get a sticker. Yep. And then, of course, we do have the hardware, which includes that drill bit I was showing you. Okay guys, let's go ahead and get this installed. Okay, so to go ahead and get this installed, guess what? I get to take this front end off again. At least it's not too hard to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off by undoing these 3 screws on top and these 4 screws on bottom. All right, with those screws out of the way, I can go ahead and lift and pull this to the side, and I have access to these 3 holes. Now, with the drill bit that they provided, what I'm gonna do is put the drill bit right through the center and drill right. See. And I'm gonna go ahead and do that with the other 2 holes. Now that that's taken care of, I can put in the 7 screws that hold in the front assembly. With those taken care of, I'm going to flip the RC over yet again, and you can see there are now 3 new holes. The reason for that is for this to slide right into position, and I can go ahead and screw in the 3 screws that they provide. However, you can see they only left 2 holes open for the front. So what you're going to do is install these 2 bottom screws first. Okay, with that taken care of, I can now finally install the chassis brace by installing the 3 screws they provide and installing the last 2 screws for the front. Here is before. And here is after. As you can see, it adds a lot more security to the front chassis. Now, one of the things that you saw that I had to do was replace the chassis because this small little piece in the front isn't very well supported. But with that brace in place, it should be able to take a lot more impact without breaking. So thank you a ton, RC Bros 2000. It took a lot of work, but Nebula is finally up and running, and that was her level 1 upgrade.